Well, welcome everyone. I'm Mike Register, the Director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and we've got a special segment today in reference to gangs. Now, when we talk about gangs in Georgia, I think that everyone is familiar that gangs are a problem in Georgia, but I don't think that our citizens understand the extent of the gang problem. You know, in Georgia, we have 159 counties, and I submit to you that every county has some sort of gang problem. You know, as we go across the state last year and we did gang investigations, almost 400 gang investigations were done by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And then when we get to 2023, the first quarter of this year, we've already launched 87 gang investigations over 41 counties. And when we talk about gang investigations and what the gangs are involved in, everything from assaults to murder to drugs, human trafficking, very extensive and very complex. And so today we have two experts with me. We have our special agent in charge of our gang task force, Ken Howard. He's with us today. Thank you for being here, Ken.
Good morning.
And we have attorney Lindsay Gardner, who is an attorney with our GBI legal division, and she kind of specializes in some of the counter gang initiatives that we have at the GBI. And so with that being said, we'll get right into it. Let's go to you first, Ken. Can you give the viewers an overview of the gang problem as you see it in Georgia, and how the Gang Task Force has goals that try to, address the gang problem that we're seeing?
Sure. To echo what you said, there's not a county in the state of Georgia that's not touched by the criminal street gang problem. It's organized crime at its basic core, and that's the way we attack the issue at the Gang Task Force. We use targeted, intelligence-led tactics to target the gangs themselves, both in rural and urban environments. That's as simple as I can state as far as the scope goes. We look for gangs, we identify gangs, and then we get after them. We try to keep the scope as simple as possible, yet also recognize that the customers that we're attempting to serve are obviously our local partners and the citizens within those communities to help keep them safe.
When we talk about the Gang Task Force and you talk about our local partners, who makes up the Gang Task Force from a law enforcement partner standpoint?
Yeah, that's a good question. This isn't a fight that we can win on our own. We rely heavily on local and federal partnerships, but especially our local partnerships, various sheriff's office and municipalities. We have task force agents that are assigned to our Gang Task Force statewide who are sheriff's deputies or police officers who are like-minded in the fight against criminal street gangs. But we also rely heavily on an ad hoc network of local sheriff's deputies and police officers who are embedded in the gang fight to just create a dense network of like-minded law enforcement individuals who believe in the cause of keeping their community safe.
Certainly. And, one of the main tools to combat gangs is intelligence, to give us an understanding of what they're doing, how they're constructed, who's involved. And so I'll go over to you, Lindsay, and I know that the GBI has an initiative that's been ongoing for the past year or so called the Gang Database. And could you explain what that is and how that impacts the gang problem and helps law enforcement in Georgia?
Absolutely. So the Gang Database is a statutorily created initiative where it is a repository of information about gangs, so the gangs in and of themselves, the gang members, and the gang associates. And this is designed to be a multi-jurisdictional intelligence database, which means federal partners, local partners, state partners, municipal partners, law enforcement authorities, prosecuting agencies, corrections agencies, all have the ability to sign on and get this intelligence information that will then be able to help us safely and effectively combat the gang crisis that we have here in the state of Georgia.
Okay, and so you said that they're able, is there a certain process that they have to go through to be able to access the gang database? And if so, what is that process?
There is. So an agency head, such as a chief of police or a sheriff or the district attorney, for example, would reach out to our gang database administration team with a letterhead saying we'd like to be a part of this. Once we get that, then we exchange what we call a participating agency agreement form, where both the agency as well as the GBI will sign off, and then our gang database team works us through the steps to make sure we get each user for that agency onboarded appropriately, which includes training, and the GBI is actually going around and training on the gang database throughout the state of Georgia. Whether you're North Georgia, South Georgia, Middle Georgia, Metro, doesn't matter. We're going out there and doing the training so that way we can get as many users onboarded and we can actually work again to fight this gang crisis.
Great. One last thing. Sometimes there's a discussion about the differences in our gang database, the GBI's gang database, and Formalytics. Could you just briefly explain the difference between Formalytics and our gang database? Certainly they're complementary and they both hold great value, but what is the difference between those two?
So the difference, and you're right, they're complementary to each other. Formalytics is a records management system, so that's going to be documentation for purposes of that investigation going towards that prosecution side of it. This is an intelligence database, so it actually works in conjunction with the records management system, whether it's Formalytics or any other records management system.
Certainly.
So they are two separate things, but they do work in conjunction with each other.
And integrating both of them effectively, it just makes us much more effective in combating gangs. Last thing, Ken, I know that about a month ago, or I think we're still in the process of opening a gang task force office in Middle Georgia, down in Macon. What is the benefit of that?
Well, I'm glad you asked about that. That's one of the most exciting, I guess, events in the Gang Task Force's recent history, as far as I'm concerned. It's just an opportunity we were building towards over the last several years to foster, cultivate local relationships in that Middle Georgia area, to reestablish the GBI's footprint in that area in the fight against organized crime, specifically criminal street gangs. And that is just the culmination of several years of hard work and planning to build out what I think is going to be a hub of law enforcement activity in the coming years, a launch pad, if you will, in the fight against criminal street gangs in our Middle Georgia area.
Certainly, and I know that we're excited to be there. I know that our partners, whether it be locals and our state partners, which is going to be helping also down in that task force office, GSP, and our federal task force partners are all excited about it, and I think that is going to have a positive impact on the safety of the citizens there. Well, let me say to both of you, thank you for all that you do for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and thank you for all that you do in combating a very serious problem that impacts the state of Georgia, gangs. Appreciate both of you, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.